So non-duality is the end of the person, in a sense, the end of history, it's the end of identity. Life is never the same again. There's no one living life, there's just life, but in everything, conversations that arise, there's nobody, in a way there's nothing to be gained from anything. There's that loss of identity. Life becomes more, in a way, more beautiful. There's the love, which is everything and nothing. But in a sense, there was always a sense, when you're identified with a person, always a sense of gain and loss. That kind of dissolves in this. So I guess that's why the energy kind of goes out of failure, success. There's something about just an acceptance of everything that happens, which isn't to say suffering can't arise, because it does and it will, like at some stage in this. But for often it's like a new beginning in a sense, and yet there is no beginning and there is no end, but it's in a sense it's like a clean slate, and there's just a coming into where you are, which is beautiful, and it's rest. It's the peace is that all that energy just being released and just being with what is. So no matter what is happening, there's this rest that is there, in which everything kind of arises. And so the beauty's with that, and the love is with that, and the intimacy with everything that's there, with everything and nothing, is what's kind of at the forefront. Right before, it might be sometimes people who are, identify with being a person, maybe they experience that for a moment or two, just that rest, and they're looking at a beautiful sunset, and maybe things fall away just for a moment. They're just stunned is a good word, because stunned is kind of like the mind dissolving, and in that moment it is seen for what it is, and there's just absorption in that beauty. But the beauty is everywhere. That's the gift as well. So the beauty is seen in beyond the opposite. So everyone is beautiful, everything is beautiful. There's no such thing as a flaw. In a way, that's beauty. It's particularly beautiful as well. So, and communication is kind of deeper in a way, because you're communicating from that, and it's there, and beyond the personality. So there is no beyond the personality in one sense. That you're communicating, on a deeper level, and there's no person here, there's no person there, and this love is just there, and you know that everybody, that's what is the case for everyone and no one. So in a sense, there's no judgment. Of course, we go on with their lives and we judge and we do whatever, but it's kind of beautiful that. So in a way, there's no blame for anybody. However they present, you're not arguing with them, you're not trying to give them solutions, you're not trying to change them in the same way as you would, because you understand that there's nothing that can bring this about, there's nothing that can, change can happen over time, you do certain things, but no one can bring that about if, because there is no one. So yeah, and this becomes the new normal, so in a way it's kind of weird talking about it, because it's just very ordinary, because it's just as you come into life and you become identified as a little kid, start to recognize itself in the mirror, and to know that its name means its physical body, and in the same way as that's gotten used to, this has gotten used to the fact that there is nothing here, nothing physically here, not even the sense of that, but there's just no boundary between this and anything else. There's just no boundary anywhere. And that is love. That's part of what love is, and that's if emptiness and fullness have been seen, and the emptiness is seen, nothing. There's nothing happening. There's no one. Nothing ever happened, and everything is love, and and you're not separate from that, and that's what this is about. It's not that it's about anything. I think I'll maybe pass over to Walter.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I was just saying, I've never spoken about this other than on Zoom and one-to-one with people. So I think maybe it just start from like when about 3 years ago, sitting in a coffee shop, ruminating about resentments, fears, doubts, and insecurities, and then all of a sudden, everything just dropped out. It's hard to describe, but the sense of being a separate individual with autonomy, with the fact that there was anyone here just vanished. And it was just the walls and the floors and the other bodies in the room. And it was all coming from the same no thing. The same void seemed to be. And I'm putting it into these words now, but I had no thought, no words at the time. You know, you've all heard floors flooring and walls walling and Walters Waltering, and it was this no thing being everything. So powerful, but for no one. And then just going from there, getting on buses, and I just saw there was no separate individuals anywhere. Not just here, but anywhere. There was no one living their life. There was just life expressing itself as, not through, but just as, you know. It's not like something else is speaking through me. This is the void appearing as Walter, and words coming out, and seemingly a life being lived, and traveling to London, and all this amazing stuff. And it's kind of funny, like the extraordinary becomes ordinary, but also is extraordinary all at the same time. You know, I go to work, have a very ordinary looking life, but just the simplest things just can blow me away. Just the fact that there's no one here, that this is just no thing being Walter, apparently, is incredible. And there's no separate existence. You know, sometimes people talk about me's. I don't really think about it that way, because there's no me, there never was a me. That was what was realized, is that this was always the case. So nothing changed. If anything, something seemed to be removed, which was like a false notion that there was an independent entity here, and the independent entity is all out there. So that fell away. But, you know, I've been asked about me's coming back, and it doesn't register, because I don't know who it would come back for. There's just nobody here to even have a sense of a me. There's no one here to be separate, ever. There's no ownership, none of these words are mine, none of these thoughts are mine. I have no ideas, I have no thoughts, I have no dreams. They're not mine. They just arise out of no thing. So that sense of being in charge, running the show, doesn't make any sense. I like the image of Indra's net, which is like spider's web with all these drops of dew. And all these drops of dew are reflecting off of each other. And the light and the rainbows, and it's this dance of light and beauty, but it's all just one appearance. It's not separate, you know, like the waves in the ocean. There's no separate existence. I know everyone's heard it's just this. I don't, you know, I say it's just this, but sometimes that word just sounds like it's making, you know, making light of it. But to me, it's magnificent. It's incredible. It includes everything. There's nothing that can't be this. So, as far as the character is concerned, or personality, it's changed, I'd say, slightly, but for the most part, you know, this expression is the same as it's always been. Because nothing's excluded. I'd say one of the big changes is, you know, I can't put anyone on a pedestal, and I don't tend to belittle myself at the same time, because I just see that it's this one thing expressing as everything, so there's no hierarchy. You know, there's no one that can know any more about this than anyone else, because there's nothing to be known. There's nothing apart from it that could figure it out or explain it. It's just sitting in a chair. It's just the sound of this voice. It's just the immediacy of what's arising. There's no past, future. There's not even a now. I can't find a now. It's always seemingly in the past. Every second is in the past. So there's nothing more immediate than this. And there's no getting out of it. There's no getting into it. Nobody has to achieve anything. Nobody has to get anywhere, because it's always already. So I don't think there's a purpose to this meeting. I don't think there's an agenda. It's just to be here. You know, there's no purpose to life. I think being alive is just miraculous. And nobody's being alive, but just life. Seemingly expressing itself, doing itself. It's just amazing. And that's the miracle, that's the mystery. But this is it, so I don't, you know, there's no way to know what it is. You call it energy, people call it consciousness, awareness, but there's no defining no thing, because it's not a thing. So anyway, I think that's good for an intro, all right.
Has anyone got any questions?
What I find heartening, so you said you're in that cafe,
Yes.
and you weren't thinking elevated thoughts or feeling, you know, just moaning, just normal moans and groans, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So no special elevated consciousness moments or anything like that, just life as normal and then poof it goes.
Yeah, seemed to be that way. And I wasn't even particularly into radical non-duality at the time. I had heard of it, but because it's a useless message, I mean, there was nothing I could do with it. And after you hear it a few times, at least to me, it was kind of repetitive, and I'm like, all right, I kind of get what they're saying. So I was into other things where I could achieve something, you know, like manifesting and things like that. You know, I wanted to create my own reality. So it's kind of funny that when the shift apparently happened, I wasn't even interested in this kind of message. So yeah, it seems like no cause and effect, you know, just spontaneously, naturally, organically, for no reason.
It's good to hear because it takes the onus of having to try, doesn't it? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how I would try to make that happen. I did plenty of meditating and stuff. You know, tried. I guess I did attempt to make something happen, but I always thought it was just going to be like I would still be here, but I would be in bliss 24/7. But there would be somebody here to own that. You know, like I'm in bliss, you know, rather than just whatever's arising for no one, which is completely different than being a person who's in a constant state of happiness, which would be bizarre, I think.
You mentioned you were ruminating about resentments.
Mm-hmm.
Do resentments still come up?
Do resentments still come up? Yeah, I think they do. Yeah. But they don't hang around as long, I don't think. It's tough to reflect like that, to compare, but you know, it's like Course in Miracles talks about forgiveness, and they say forgive them for what they did not do, you know. So, but that almost sounds like something you could apply, like you know, I know that there's no free will, so I forgive everyone because no one's doing anything. It's not like that. Like if resentment comes up, it comes up. You know, I'm not doing that either. So, but it does tend to be a little more fleeting. I can't think of any at the moment. If I could think of a resentment, I would use it as an example. But I can't. Yeah.
Do you get any? Because, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, they do come up. They don't hang around for as long, but sometimes they do. But I guess now there's like I know it's seen quicker that it is me resenting as opposed to just being lost in it for the whole duration of the resentment.
Okay.
It's like at the moment it gets a bit like it just can't hang on for too long because it gets so fuzzy, and then I'm like, oh that's resentment, and then as soon as I see that, that's what it is. It fizzles. It's like I know there's nothing at the end of that train of thought. It's just more resentment, so it just drops.
I just thought, like, because during the honeymoon period, like with me, I don't think I could have resented anything. Like, no, yes, I do get them, but I didn't for a period. Like, I don't think I got anything, but maybe that was because the mind collapsed and it doesn't necessarily, you know, a lot of people just get slowed down thought, don't they? And my mind kind of was gone, like pretty much 24/7. So it wasn't really. It's hard to resent, like. And yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it can be dipped in and out of in a way, like, but that makes it sound more cause and effect. But isn't it? It's more background, I guess. You're not stuck in that. I don't know what anybody else's experiences.
I think what I would say to that is that whilst resentment occurs, it seems like it doesn't occur here.
Mm.
No.
So it's kind of a little bit abstract, you know, it never happens in the centre. It may come up as like a, as you said, like a fuzziness, but it just doesn't locate itself. So consequently, how I would translate that is I'm not identified with it in the way that I used to be, right? It used to happen at the centre of me. My epicenter would experience resentment and ruminate, and you know, everything would fire up, but yeah, it doesn't happen at my core. My core actually remains what it is. It remains quiet.
So would you say there's not so much feeling to it then when you point to the body?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I can catch myself in feeling, but still,
Yeah.
in comparison to the way it was before,
Yeah.
it's absolutely not even close to the core. Whereas it was the
Is it
centre of
difficult
my
to remember the way it was before?
more and more.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yours happened quite a while ago, didn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Do you know how many years was yours?
2011.
Oh, right, okay.
So,
Yeah. It's a long time.
And it's like unconditional love appearing as a resentment. Just see, even the resentment is imbued with this love.
Yeah, I feel like I see the thought process that suggests that maybe I maybe this, it's kind of, it happens in the moment, that the moment of reason, the moment a feeling occurs that is sparked by something, there's just a fast process that, within a second or two just has the answer to why that's not so, and why I don't feel like that, why I don't, why I can't understand what might be happening for that person. I feel like I can always understand what might be happening enough that the feeling never gets hold, really.
What you mean in terms of empathy?
I guess, yeah.
So that's increased for you then?
Yeah.
It's supposed
But
to.
it almost feels like it's, there could potentially be an edge of using that to spiritually bypass ownership of actually any feelings or being affected by anything in the outside world, but hopefully I'm on the right side of that. But either way, I'm the beneficiary of a very calm existence as a result. It's like I see this computation happen when any situation arises, and it's always, the answer always comes out the same. I see, it's just love. I see and I love.
Nice.
Yeah. I see that more too, that it's the sort of, people seem to be just operating out of this programming and conditioning and DNA, or however they're wired, and I don't see someone in there that's controlling that. It's just, I hate to use like a robot example, I think that's horrible, but like it's just automatically, spontaneously, naturally, like there's no one saying anything offensive.
Is that the genes operating? Biological?
I just see that there's no control anywhere. There's no autonomy, authorship. So, you know, who am I going to blame? You know, the conditioning of this computer program that's running, you know. I mean, it's not that I think about it that way, it's just, it just seems to be a way to explain it.
Mm.
That that's happening here, you know. I'm not choosing these words.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like, you know, once I take into account the algorithm that is myself and my own personal biases, you know, and that, and then factor in probably the algorithm of the other as well and what they've been through, and, you know,
Yeah.
there's nothing left to be taken into account. I see the flaws in both sides and the, you know, and the sweet perfection at the same time, and it's just like, well, there we go. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Like two chess programs playing each other, two computers playing each other.
Mm.
It's just the one energy, you know, like that microwave, the toaster, and the teapot, all plugged into the same. You know, they all appear different, they all do different things, but the same energy animating them all.
Because I appear to be hostage to my emotions, you know.
Mm.
Yes, it sort of drags you down here.
Yeah, I just say there's no one hostage to their emotions, it's just emotions appearing.
And then the me taking ownership of them, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess that's what the me is. The one who thinks has emotions.
I guess from an existential point of view, it's kind of the difference between a first-person video game and I guess, would it be second person or third person, where you can see the back of the head of the character in the game,
Oh yeah.
rather than just having the view of emotion in the world, you know? So I see the character too. I kind of am the character because that's my role in the game, but I also see the character and the game itself. And I can't not, you know, the moment the body chemistry changes, it's not long before when I do any kind of investigation, it's just like, okay, yeah.
It's so easy to see the internal processes, isn't it? There's so much more self-awareness, I think. It's like quite hard to turn away from what you are in terms of the person. It's odd that, because it's so unconscious before. Well, it certainly was here. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, oh my god, I think this, or, you know, like, or, yeah, it's all there to be seen. Can't run away from it.
Sometimes I find it feels almost a little unkind not to join people in the story, right? When they're desperately begging you to join them in the story, but you can't. I just can't, literally.
Do you never succumb to that? Like I do sometimes.
Just play the game a little bit.
I do a bit sometimes.
Yes, and I guess that's, you know, that's the rub of, that's the edge of personal difficulty for me, is marrying that, you know. It's like, okay, do I learn to kind of play the game a little more?
Yeah, I mean, it's inauthentic bullshit, but like sometimes you just, it depends on the scenario, doesn't it? And,
Yeah.
What would be an example of that?
So, I guess, imagine you're in an intimate relationship with somebody who has a story from the past that that is trauma still. Right, I guess it's mostly about trauma, isn't it? So that's the stuff that people kind of hold on to for dear life almost, it seems, we get so attached to that identity.
Oh, yeah.
So that, for example, is something where they want to feel your empathy and your compassion, and kind of what we're used to as humans from the previous game is what that looks like is you kind of join them in it to some degree. Which, that brings up that's the edge of the dilemma for me, is am I really serving you by, is my deepest service to you to join you in that game, or there's something brutal about the edge of radical self-responsibility, right, and radical acceptance, because it doesn't have a grey edge. Ultimately, at its edge, it's just fucking black and white. It is or it isn't. So, yeah, that edge there in trying to be empathic and compassionate.
You don't want to appear cold.
Yeah, I mean, it's still because, as I said, people are loathe or find it difficult to let go of their trauma, right? So, it happens one time, it happens 2 times, by the 10th time, if they're still in that same place, and I've been keeping my safe, eventually it's like, do I just give them a little bit, because I come off cold time after time after time. It presents itself as a dilemma and as a choice each time. Do I continue, or do I play the human game a little more?
I'm kind of okay if I'm blissed out and someone's talking about their trauma. I mean, it's okay to be in a different state. Often I'll feel sadness when somebody expresses that. I tend to feel that. But yeah, I mean, I'm actually quite fine with that, because I'm still there. Like, I think because the intimacy is there, like, you're so connected and I'm so listening, because I find it really curious, like, what people have been through, and I don't really get tired of listening to people's repetitive stuff, actually. So, so I'm quite a good person to whine to. I just don't. I don't know, because I've been through that, and I'm just I could probably be tested on that, and maybe I'd be like, fuck off. Maybe that was just during COVID. I don't know. Yeah. But I would never. But I don't know. Like, it's different anyway, because you're actually listening for the first time. I don't know if it's like that for you, but you're actually really receiving what somebody's saying. I never had that really. I was just fucking self-obsession. Okay, yeah, self-obsession. So now it's more like, most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, I guess any part of me that's challenged by that whole process is not it's not consciousness itself anyway. It's going to be a part of my human that gets challenged, right? That wants to. So yeah, I guess that's the edge for me, or maybe that's where I find a little bit of I get to feel what it's like to be that as well.
Yeah.
I have to say, I was speaking to a woman once, a few years back, and I realised she was a very good listener. She was very, very good at listening, and it was an unusual thing to have someone who really, really listens. Most people don't listen, actually. And I thought, wow. I said to her, well done, you're such a good listener. But I was amazed at her listening skills, you know.
Oh, it's powerful, isn't it? If you haven't had that,
Yeah.
it's really transformative because you don't realise, like someone, like I suppose that's in the therapy thing. The least you can expect is that, right? But yeah, it's
There's no talk, but just the listening was just so good, you know.
yeah. I remember getting really caught in my story, you know, and stuff like, and then just looking out and somebody's like in a therapy situation, they're there, they're present, they're still with you, and that was like, wow, you know. It's, yeah. We don't make a lot of time for each other like ordinarily, do we? You know, like a lot, you know, before this particularly, you know. It's just,
Sounds like that listening is the compromise of not playing the game but playing the game. But at least, you know, the person feels like you're...
Yeah, I guess to be fully present. But so what I'm getting a sense of in my example is maybe you know, maybe there's a part of me that isn't being fully present, that is actually kind of in a little bit of reaction to the discomfort. Really, this again, you know.
okay, yeah.
So yeah, that's the challenge. That, as I said, the pure presence won't be affected. You know, won't be negatively affected or affected in any way by anything. It will just be present, and it will be compassionate by its very nature. But
And I suppose it depends how close you are as well. Like in relationship, because you rub up against each other so much more. It's a different than friendships, isn't it? So I was thinking of listening to a repetitive story. Or I was thinking of a friend. I wasn't thinking of a partner just whining on a you know. So yeah, we have more tolerance for that, don't we? And then relationships are, when things get difficult, they get difficult, don't they? And then in friendships, it depends on your friendships.
I think with listening, people want to be, you know, it's like an expression people say, like, I feel you. Like, people want to be felt. You know, they want their words not just to be heard, but to be felt at a deep level. So I think about that sometimes when I do interviews. Just try to really feel what the person's saying rather than listen. And in terms of the empathy and all that, like, a lot of times that phrase, like, that's just what's happening there, you know? Something's happening there, something's happening here. Apparently, there's no here there, but it's a different subjective experience happening there. You know, I don't know why I thought of that, but if somebody is expressing a lot of trauma and stuff, you know, I don't tend to take it on. It's because I see that's just what's happening there. It's not what's happening here. It's not better or worse. It's just different. A different apparent experience. You know, there's no denying that there's a dream. You know, we seem to be in some kind of dream. You know?
But again, that kind of feeling the person where they are and you know, just remaining where you are, again, I feel like, you know, to maybe the average conditioned human, that might feel a little bit ruthless, you know, it's a bit, they would imagine that kind of, they would kind of almost project separation onto that when you know, it's at its simplest level it's anything but, you know. But yeah, I think that's what I get as well. It's like, oh, you know, you should be moved by this. And by moved, what that kind of looks like is join me in it somehow. I don't know.
But it's seen as healthy not to. It is actually seen as a kind of like sign of health. Not, you don't have to join. You know, like it's like a therapy term. Like
Yeah.
I know what you mean. I think I succumb more when people say things like they really struggle with their minds, like, and I'm like, like, you know, like, so I don't want to sound arrogant or something like, right? Well, but because I often when somebody's telling me something really terrible, like I might be blissed out, but it's like, and I don't feel any compulsion in that. But like say sometimes sadness, it just seems like it's not my sadness, you know, whether that's just, I wouldn't call myself an empath, but I do seem to feel that when other people are feeling it.
Yeah.
In a certain context, you know, but one to one. I don't know about you, but yeah, I like it's the best way. I think if there's bliss there and somebody's in distress, I feel like it's just that feeling of okayness. I think that communicates somehow. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm just sitting there feeling right in there like a fuck's sake, you know, keep joining. But it does feel like a really good kind of energy to bring to distress, doesn't it? Because I guess if anybody sees distress in you, it's not.
Yeah.
You'd feel maybe a bit more unsafe. I don't know.
I mean, if you were leaning back in bliss, then it would be a bit, well, I'm alright, Jack, you know. But
rolling your eyes.
But it's not that, right? You're present.
Yeah. Just
And I was going to say leaning in, but there is no leaning in. But your presence
yeah.
pervades or permeates. That's the right word.
Yeah. Oh, fine. Yeah. Come on in.
Sorry to, is it alright to?
I mean, I recently started therapy, and you know, as we've discussed before, you know, it's really important to find a therapist who's awake, who understands the concept at least.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you know, what is just standard operating procedure to me is probably make me look like a psychopath to a therapist that can't quite conceive of my starting point.
I think you could easily end up pathologised.
Mm.
And it doesn't feel that safe, I think.
Mm.
I mean, some people, if they get it, if they know about it, and maybe they've had a glimpse or something, and there's an openness there, but like there's, and then people have ideas as well of like, even people who are awake, is like there's no such thing as no mind, or, you know, and then you feel like, you know, you start suppressing your own experience or hiding that because nobody gets where you're coming from, and then you can't really explain your experience. Then you're lost. It's difficult. It is difficult, and even just knowing that you're with someone who's awake, there's a relaxation. You can talk anything, and it's, I guess, you know, it's not going to be, I don't know, like tampered with in a certain way, or it can be difficult in conversations, can't it? You just, how do you function? I don't even know how to express how I function myself, like never mind like someone else getting it, but I don't function as I did. And I still get like energetic, like I have problems with sleep, but I don't, like the emotions are different, like they're really stable, but you know, so it's almost like there's still energetic disturbance here, but it doesn't turn, you know, it's just without all the emotional stuff, so it's kind of weird, even that. I don't know what the hell that is, but yeah.
I mean, what came up for me as you were talking as well is that kind of paradoxically, there's an element of loneliness about this state as well, right? I mean, in terms of non-dual, there isn't, but the actual experience of being awake can actually can at times make you feel like, yeah, okay, no, not too many people understand, or, you know.
Yeah, it can be isolating
Yeah.
in a strange way.
that's part of the experience to draw in, you know, to go into, I think, as well, because otherwise that's a separation that can form, you know, that's a split then, but actually that loneliness is one end of the spectrum, right? The singularity is one end of the spectrum that ends in, you know, non-singularity, in oneness. You know, there's non-duality and duality, the black and white of the equation.
Do you ever find, like, because like, I sort of think of like friends and like getting on and having a really good time, and then the conversation turns to spirituality, and I'm like, oh no. And it's like, I find that quite difficult, you know, because of spirituality, like as much as I'm interested in metaphysical stuff and I'm interested in the Kundalini, blah blah blah, it's not that, you know, path or, you know, all that falls apart, like, so you can't have those conversations, the linear ones are...
Yeah, I find the moment that conversation comes up and people maybe turn to me to see what I've got to say.
Uh-huh. Very disappointed and annoyed, maybe annoyed.
I communicate, but don't really have anything to say, mostly, you know, I just, yeah.
Kind of feels like playing the human game, like you said earlier, you know.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's like that with the fear of death sometimes. Like that kind of went away. So it's just, I think what you mean by loneliness is like trouble relating to people anymore.
Yeah.
Because that's a prominent, as well as victim mentality and a lot of different things that people want to pull you in so you can share in this, and it just doesn't resonate anymore. So you're like, I remember that, but you know, so you just kind of go along with it. So I'm hearing what you're saying.
Yeah. It's why I find these meetings so nourishing, is that we can communicate on the topic, and you know, some the words help, and sometimes it's wordy and sometimes it's not, but I get to listen and communicate.
Yeah, it's interesting just to hear someone else's take on how they experience this too. It's been really interesting, and then somebody says something you haven't thought of, and then you can kind of own that. You're like, wow, I didn't think of it like that, and suddenly it's another part of your experience you're recognising, and because it is like putting words to some of this is, obviously it's impossible, but some of it you can kind of give some sort of reality to it, you know. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's just good to be in a space where it's like, okay, yeah, I understand them, they understand me, whether any of us speak or not. You know, it's irrelevant whether I say anything or I just sit here and soak it up. It doesn't matter either way. It just, communication is fucking buzzing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's true. It does go beyond the words and that, just knowing that, doesn't it? I think it really does. And
Yeah.
you can relax in that somehow. It's just not quite like a church, but it's a sacred space now, nonetheless, somehow.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess people come together in church and, you know, to do exactly the same thing. The device is the text, but that's irrelevant really as well.
yeah.
I mean, for those that are kind of turned on and switched on, I mean, there might be some people there that are completely in their minds and they're absolutely trying to fucking squeeze the last ounce of juice out of the text and the, you know, and the form, because I guess that's the edge of.
Does anybody remember how boring it was to go to church as a kid? It was so boring.
Well, it's like, you know, when the Queen died, right? It's like, you know, the moment anything gets in a church, it just goes on too long. I can be as into what's happening as you like, but you look around and everyone else is feeling the same. You know, I looked at that funeral and I thought, they're all just fucking kind of bored.
Yeah.
And they're there so heartfelt. Everyone is so invested in the intention of the idea of why they're there. And yet, it just...
I think Zoom reveals a lot, doesn't it? The yawning faces and just... I don't know. Yeah. Mm. Singing home. It's kind of easier when there are like silences in this room, which can be nice or not nice, but when there's somebody else at the front, I don't feel responsible for it. So I'm like, because I suppose when you come to the meetings, you want a bit of chat, but sometimes when it falls silence, it can be delicious, or it can be. I always feel like, well, I've got to do something.
Tony says that beyond the words, there's an energy there, isn't there? And that the audience, I suppose, can take a refuge, if you like, because we are meeting nothing, he says, isn't that what he says? We're meeting up with nothingness, and which is and we can rest in that nothingness.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't happen for everyone all the time. Does it, like, 'cause people are frustrated by the message, you're just stuck in frustration. It's amazing how much it differs, but I think most people get a sense of a kind of gentle let go in the meeting, just because of that lack of agenda.
There's an energy beyond the words, is what he says, yeah.
Yeah. And also, because of the nature of it, it's assumed it's kind of okay to shut your eyes and just, go into a meditative state. You wouldn't really see that in any other context, not really. Because we all know what that is, don't we? It's okay. Or even if you start charting, fuck, it doesn't matter. What's going on?
I think the energy's like everything is just as it is, without having to be any different. And that's why I get confused. It's very popular right now to criticize this message. People saying people are being harmed by it and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know if it's being misheard or misrepresented or either, because to me it's just this perfection. Everything is perfect just as it is. There is no better next. There's no worse next. There is no next. It's just, so how that could harm anybody, I don't know, but it's just the most loving thing I can think of to share. Is that this is love. This is just love being this energy in this room. and nothing needs to change, so that's why you can just sit here, peace and ease. Because this doesn't expect anything, because it is already. So that's the energy for me. It's almost like a loving acceptance, a loving presence. That's a self-shining, a candle flame that never flickers. It's just always there. It's always on. The lights are always on, but no one's home. So, but there's no need to give that any fancy names, Even energy, I don't know. Is it energy? I don't know. Who would know that?
When you spoke of the harm that this does to people, I was going to say this idea, but I can't even give it that name. What I saw is the absolute fucking danger of giving up that which this would have you doing by kind of accepting it, right? By taking this as it is, it forces you to give up kind of everything that's gone before, and that's where the edge of danger is, right? It's like, it's devastation and destruction of kind of the entire concept that went before it.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where people feel like, oh yeah, this is potentially harmful, right? Because fuck me, I'm on the edge of the precipice here. You really want me to let go?
But you're letting go into love.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I feel like, in my case, until life pushed me to the edge where I was forced to let go, that was the point where I found out it was love. It felt like going into destruction, being forced by circumstances, but I just let go. It's like, okay, whatever. Let's see. And then the magic is revealed, it's love, and actually I'm not falling, I can fly.
I think if you can't conceive of beyond the mind, though, there's just this. I think it's natural. There's a compulsion to imitate the message because it can only be heard through the mind. Then,
No.
it's just so everything that's said about it is wanting to be. Because if you believe that's the truth or the ideal, why wouldn't you want to have that? That's just it. I just don't think there's anything that can be done about that. It's just what we do, isn't it?
Because all of the mind's self-preservation systems are going to be screaming at their most absolute, right? You're about to, whether you're conscious of it or not, you are about to maybe not kill the mind, but to kill your identification with it, and its inbuilt security mechanism is gonna do whatever it can. It's gonna tell you, no, do not push that button.
Well, whenever I have my glimpses, whenever glimpses have happened, it's always been a surprise, because it's got nothing to do with me at all. So it just bypasses all that. It's, oof, what's going on? Yeah.
And there's another kind of freedom that can happen through the mind, and that's the psychological too. So in a way, that's where it's not, to be dismissed in that level either. I guess it's a different kind of waking up, not that they could be compared because we can't, but
Yeah.
definitely.
I think that surprise is a really good point, actually, because I feel like it's nigh on impossible to take yourself to the edge of that cliff and consciously and willingly throw yourself off. That's not what happened to me. It happened in completely the opposite direction, you know, and that's why it was a surprise. I wasn't there trying to do that. I was over there just fucking doing whatever I could, you know. It was just disassembling rather than without my conscious idea to even do that. I think and I guess maybe that's the difficulty of seeking, right? It's like you can't. I couldn't imagine how I could take myself to the edge of that cliff and throw myself off.
No, it's impossible.
Yeah.
It is the impossible.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Because I used to have, when I was a youth, you know, 20s and 30s, I used to have quite a few of these glimpses and surprises. And as I've got older, they don't come anymore. And I was wondering, is it because I get more crusty as you get older? so my shell is harder for the, because but those are great days, but it's been decades since those things have happened, you know? Yeah. Does old age and crustiness, I know what I like, sort of build that shield up?
I mean, there's no way of knowing. In your case, I mean, not everybody does. Like, I know there is a tendency to become more rigid in life, but if you're going to these meetings, if you've been interested in self-development and stuff, you're probably not as crusty as you think you are. You know, maybe you're being a bit hard on yourself. I don't know, because a lot of people that come to the meetings have done work on themselves and stuff, haven't they? And you know, and if you're growth orientated, I don't know if you are or not, like you do stay fresh because you're totally fresh to your experience and you're learning. Getting psychological insights as well. I think that keeps you young mentally, stops you becoming more rigid as you get rigid and bitter or whatever. Like, yeah, the default, because we don't stay still, if we don't move, we regress, you know, like you can actually go backwards, psychologically speaking. But there's nothing's an impediment to seeing this or to glimpses. I mean, I don't know. But mind you, a lot of people have glimpses on retreats, but it actually, when it falls away forever, like there's nothing that can bring that about, it doesn't seem so. But yeah. You're frustrated as hell. You know. So did you have a cluster of them? Like, were they kind of like around them?
Yes.
What was that, a long time ago, and it was around a few years or something?
In my 20s and 30s, yeah.
20s and 30s. Did you live very differently then?
I was young.
Young, okay. Right. So you're having a lot of fun. Was life more fun, would you say then, or was it all kind of new? And I suppose it is when you're 20. I don't know, like 20s.
Yes, no, it was. I wouldn't say the word fun. No.
Okay, I suppose it never is it not your 20s?
No, but there are surprises all the time. You know, it wasn't. It was just happened. You know?
Were you a seeker?
Pardon?
Were you a seeker then?
I suppose I've always been a meditator. Yeah, I mean, from 18, the 17, 18, you must. The urge to meditate was very strong. I couldn't deny it. It was there. You must meditate. It wasn't. There was no choice whatsoever. You know, so.
Right.
So the meditation was always, the urge to meditate was strong, always there.
And now, do you meditate?
Vaguely.
Okay.
Very occasionally, but not. But it's gone. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So because basically, once I discovered non-duality and seeking, I went, there's no salvation with meditation. So, but the urge to meditate was super duper strong. I don't know where it came from, but no, it's faded away with the crustiness.
It's a shame in a way as well. The message kind of puts people off meditating when, like, there's so many benefits from it, and if you're getting energetic experiences, it's one of the things that seems to give rise to more altered states and experiences, other energetic experiences, as is heartfelt prayer, or even concentrated. If you read, like doing anything with intense focus, can kind of give rise to that sort of thing.
Because Tony's quite strict about. He's quite firm about that, isn't he? He says, to all that. Really.
Who?
Tony.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's not. Well, it's not part of non-duality. That, in a way, it's just same energy, but yeah, it's just, I guess, when you're at the front of the room, your obsessions start to come out of your body. Sorry. Yeah.
It's true actually that Tony would say that the first and last delusion is the I, the self. So if there's no I, what's the point of doing any energetic work or meditation? Because this is the illusion. The I is the illusion. It's the first illusion and the last illusion. That's the only illusion. So that's I hear. Yeah, that's where the dilemma and confusion comes. That I understand this energetic work by meditating or Kundalini or whatever, and then comes the message, no I. So who's doing that and what for?
It's be the same as eating. There's no one eating, but you still can enjoy the pizza. Yeah. Enjoyment happens.
Without purpose, though. That's why.
What's that?
Without a purpose, you just.
Without a purpose,
like
yeah. Well, Alan Watts has a beautiful thing about the dance. And he says the purpose of the dance is not to arrive someplace on the floor. It's just the dance itself. And so meditations like that, during this meeting I sat here and I guess you could call it meditation. It just feels good to do. But there's no, I'm not looking to achieve anything. This can be meditation without a meditator. So there are no rules. I wouldn't tell anyone not to meditate, in other words. It's not, this is already, so you can't prevent this.
Yeah.
You can't, there's nothing in the way of it. So if you have a lot of spiritual practices, that can no more help you or hinder you from seeing this, not seeing this. So, I just don't recommend paths because this is already, and that's the message. So, but if you are meditating and you feel blissed out, then I'd be the last person to say don't do that.
Yeah, I don't think that Tony is saying that don't do that. He says don't, this is not what is, that's not going to help in any way to,
But it's also not going to hurt.
It's not going to hurt, sure. Yeah. But the question is that, is it going to, if certain things like, Kundalini or energetic work, is that helpful in any way?
Richard says that if you're in a cell, you might as well have some cushions to make the cell more comfortable, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't really like that. I know what he's saying when he says that, but life can be rich, right? So I suppose I wouldn't use that. And okay, there's no I there, but if you live on pizza for the rest of your life, reap what you sow. Kundalini experiences and interesting life experience. That's makes life rich. In how you live and I don't know, meditation can bring insights, creative thinking. And it's bringing both sides of your brain and lying. It's there's health, there's balance in that, and it's all worthwhile. And I really care about what I do. My self-care is, I focus on that. I really do, and it matters. What I'm doing in life. I look forward to certain things, and and I think it's exciting. Having insights are psychological and just constantly becoming more and more aware of stuff I don't know, so I can see when people see that the message and then becomes a kind of inertia, and I don't know, I find that really sad because I'm so growth orientated now, since my second Kundalini awakening, nothing to do with the seeing of the non-dual. I find it fascinating, and I find life fascinating. I'm really engaged in it, I really am, and so I feel disheartened when I hear people say that. It's no, don't, it's, this is to be lived, and risks should be taken. I know there's no one to take them, but like, I think life's exciting. I mean, it could be shit as well, obviously, but it's quite honest. But like, yeah, I think a lot of people get stuck when they hear the message, and that's really sad, because it's like, you know, I don't know.
Would you say that kind of ties into, well, to what you were saying about the harm? Where does the harm, people say there's harm in the message. It's like when someone's intellect takes it and uses it to be an arsehole and say, oh well, there's no one doing it, or perhaps miss out on something that they enjoy and stop themselves from doing it, thinking it's a hindrance to them seeing themselves or whatever. Like,
They're trying to apply it, essentially.
yeah, like applying in a way.
Yeah. If it's turned into, well, it's often misheard as there's nothing you can do, which drives me crazy. Because that's not what's being said. You know, we were talking about earlier about someone maybe being misheard and being frustrated. It's not that I get frustrated, but it's just like, I'll literally say, that's not what I'm saying, there's no you. But doing happens. And it's beautiful, because when the goal of meditation is removed, or the idea that I could open my eyes and be, realized or awakened or something, when it's just to sit there, it's just for the thing in and of itself, and there's no expectation that something miraculous is going to happen, because it's already miraculous. Being alive is miraculous. So I enjoy it more. Not that I meditate a lot, but occasionally I do. Just want to sit there quietly and just be, I mean, it's not like you be in the presence, but I don't know, there's certain things that are just felt more intensely just by sitting there, and the distractions of life are not there. But yeah, I think it's harmful if it's taken as well, there's no free will, I might as well do whatever. And people will ask that, like, well, why not just rob a bank or whatever? Like, makes no sense. Like what I was saying earlier about wiring, programming, conditioning. If it's not in your nature to rob a bank, you're not going to rob a bank. But if you're a bank robber, you're a bank robber. But there's either way that you're not doing it. But it still apparently happens, I'm not denying that there's something happening. I was going to throw in the word apparently, but I get sick of saying that too, because I feel like everyone here knows what I'm talking about. I really have to say that, put that in every other word. There's nothing actually happening, right?
Just put a sign at the back saying, assume apparently.
Yeah.
I think some of the times the way we phrase things, like, it's just a story, which is kind of a natural thing to say, and then just kind of minimizes life, and then people don't want to. I've seen people, like, after meetings, I remember back in the day, like, kind of almost ashamed, like, that they went to therapy, like, and so there's that other danger as well of, like, kind of, it can have effects, but it's inevitable, and it's not meant that way, and it's kind of innocent, but it's kind of nice to be reminded, I think, sometimes that it's good and it's healthy, to do these things. And I think if you say it makes the prison more comfortable in a way, even that minimizes it somehow. It's not intended to, but there is something about, oh God, I'm moving the cushions around in fucking prison. Well, why bother? It's just, I think anything we say about it, like, has potential repercussions. And yet it's innocent, it's just not meant to be, taken that way, because it's beyond this and beyond the mind, and not beyond the mind because there is no beyond, etc., etc. especially if you've got a history of minimizing stuff, you know, minimizing your own suffering and stuff, you know. Which a lot of us find it quite easy to invalidate our own experience, and you know.
And the prison's imaginary anyway.
Say it again.
That prison cell is imaginary anyway.
For most of us.
You know, it's the bars are made out of our beliefs. But if you're in a personal prison that you've created, why not make it more comfortable? There seems to be no way of getting out of it if there's an apparent you in there.
But if it's more comfortable, then you might not want to get out of that prison.
Well, I
As
said
the
choice.
more comfortable we make the prison, the less incentive is there to get out of that prison. Anyway.
But there's no choice when it comes down to it.
That's true.
Well, I guess what I mean is like when I felt like I was a separate individual and all that, you know, I was messing around with different practices, and I'd say I was doing things that were making the prison more comfortable. So we were talking about therapy, I did therapy, learning different whatever, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. It seemed to be making things easier or helping in some way, you know? So I say, why not?
In a sense, you know, life still has to be lived, so, like, okay, no one's doing that, but there's no freedom for the character in that sense. I mean, shit will still happen, except, you know, so it's, you know, it's not like an absolute freedom, like, so you become homeless and that's okay, but, you know, we have to deal with shit, like, so it can be confusing in that sense as well, because there still is this relative existence, even if there's no one living it, and that's not always easy. So I don't know, it just, some of this could give just a wrong idea of life somehow, I think.
Yeah, it's like that, the great way is without preferences, but, you know, this thing's not without preferences. It's just saying, this is without preferences. It's like unconditional love is without preferences. Because unconditional love can appear as hate, so it really is all-inclusive, but that doesn't change whatever you want to, you know, body, mind, organism, character. And yeah, like just the story, I used an example, there was a sage and I guess a seeker having a conversation. The sage was crying about the loss of his son. And the seeker said, well, I thought you said it was all just a story. It's like, yeah, but the loss of one's son is the saddest story of all. And so it doesn't change the fact that the story impacts the character, you know. It's not a dismissal of life as it appears. I'd say it's more of an intimacy with life as it appears. I think I've been cracked wide open. I was probably more disassociated before, you know, because there's more of an openness and just a unicity with all it is, you know. So, you know, like I'm more apt to break into tears, you know, than I used to be. I was a little more cut off. But it's all okay, like I don't feel like anything's not allowed to happen. So it's not a prescription that I need to like not have preferences or can't meditate or can't do this or... That doesn't make any sense. I mean, there's just nobody here, that's the message. But there could be nobody here meditating and nobody here, you know, whatever.
And the character is the gift, right? That part of that vulnerability, that seeming flaw in the character that he's affected by, and you know that's actually the gift, right? That's, you know, I guess the big I is kind of a flat line of just love and compassion, but the character actually, it's, you know, it's such a beautiful range of experience of, you know, profit and loss and
Yeah.
birth and death and happy and sad, and actually, wow, you know, it's...
Like one of those heart monitors, you know?
Yeah.
If it's flatline, you're dead.
Yeah.
So that's not what I would want.
So it's not,
A bland existence.
upon awakening, it's not to be eradicated, actually it's to be, wow, it's to be treasured, really, you know? That's actually the treasured part of this human existence, which is apparently seems to have a limitation of time put upon it. You know, the existence of the body, and my concept of being a human that carries on for 70 or 80 years is that's what comes as part of the deal.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the good part. Be it happy or sad, you know, be it death or you know, or joy. You know, it's all, they're equally fucking amazing and alive, right? They bring in that aliveness, that experience of energy, that experience of emotion. That's actually the gift. That's the sweet part. That's the part that I can't quite fathom, so I have to just accept it. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. I think Tony says, I'll paraphrase, but you know, people think that the treasure is to be found in life, but not realizing that life is the treasure.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You know, this is already it.
And life is the path, right? You know, we were talking about non-duality as a path, or this and that, and when you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, it's life itself. That's the path.
It's all of it, yeah.
Yeah.
You're yeah, in that sense, there's no getting off the path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, everything that's sought by selection of maybe a specific method can be gotten just through life itself as well, you know. And I guess that's the danger of taking one view and being stuck with it, you know. It kind of, no, there's a million billion ways to get to the same place, you know. And actually being stuck with one idea is probably going to dry up, you know. There's so many doors into the same place. There's so many methods. So, you know, any one path that says this is the only way, run a fucking mile, man.
Yeah.
It is a way, and it absolutely can work, but don't select it in isolation or singularity, because you'll lose all the other options, you know. The surprising trapdoor that you might just fall through, you know. Listening to music, suddenly, oh, there I am, you know. It's,
Yeah, there's no way to this. This is the way.
yeah.
We're already in the way, all of us. We're already on the path. We're already, you know.
Yeah, I guess that's what's implied in there is nothing that can be done, but don't do nothing, for sure. Don't
Exactly.
take that as there is nothing I can do. Do fucking everything and it will just happen on its own, you know. Life, just chase life itself and aliveness. And I think it will be there, you know. It's when I go beyond my protections, when I go beyond my fears, when I just go, fuck it. Actually, that statement was what absolutely preceded my moment of transformation. Was fuck it.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was fuck it because I can't do it anymore. But yeah, what was the protection was just removed. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Time for a break now. So we all chill out for a while. Yeah, not from talking about it. Just that one.